DC Comics built an entire mythology around the idea that emotions are the most powerful force in the universe. Not magic, not kryptonite, not alien DNA, emotions. And they divided that power into a spectrum of colored light, each one fueling its own intergalactic army. Today I'm breaking down every single Lantern Corps, what powers them, and why they exist. Starting with the one that started it all, the Green Lantern Corps. The Green Lantern Corps is the baseline. Every other corps on this list exists as a reaction to or rebellion against what the Green Lanterns built first, and what they built is staggering. Founded approximately 7.2 billion years ago by the Guardians of the Universe on the planet Oa, this is the oldest organized peacekeeping force in DC Comics. At its peak, before the Blackest Night, the Corps had over 7,200 members patrolling every sector of space. Their power source is the green light of willpower on the emotional electromagnetic spectrum. Not love, not rage, not fear, pure will. Earth alone has produced a disproportionate number of heavy hitters, starting with Alan Scott in 1940 and Hal Jordan in 1959, which is wild, considering how cosmically irrelevant Earth is supposed to be. But here's the detail that gets people. The famous oath in Brightest Day and Blackest Night, it's technically optional. The ring doesn't require it to function. It's a psychological ritual, a self-imposed willpower boost through belief and repetition. The rings draw power from the central power battery on OA, but the real fuel is the will behind them. The oath just sharpens it, and the fact that every lantern still recites it anyway tells you everything about what willpower actually means. But willpower alone wasn't enough to keep the universe in line, because one of the greatest Green Lanterns ever decided fear was a better tool: the Sinestro Corps. Sinestro wasn't some random villain who woke up one day and decided to oppose the Green Lantern. He was one of them. And not just any Green Lantern, he was considered the greatest of all time. Decorated, respected, held up as the gold standard for what a ring wielder should be. Then they found out he'd been using his ring to turn his home planet into a dictatorship. And here's the thing, Sinestro didn't see it as corruption. He saw it as proof that willpower alone wasn't enough. Order required fear. Control required consequences. So when he was exiled, he didn't just sulk. He built an entire corps designed to prove his point. In 2007, Sinestro formally unleashed his Yellow Lantern Corps from the antimatter universe on Quard, powered by the yellow light of fear. He assembled 7,200 members, 2 for each of the 3,600 sectors of space, pulling from beings across the universe who could instill great terror. That's a military structure built to mirror and overwhelm the Green Lantern sector by sector. But the truly disturbing part is how the rings work. A Sinestro Corps ring functions optimally when the wielder has a victim nearby who fears them. The Corps wasn't designed to defend anything. It was designed to hunt. The Sinestro Corps war that followed in 2007 didn't just shake the Green Lanterns. It forced DC to formally expand the emotional spectrum into a full mythology. Every single corps on this list exists because Sinestro kicked the door open. The guy who wanted to control everything accidentally unleashed total chaos across the entire spectrum. But if you think fear is an ugly emotion to weaponize, wait until you see what happens when pure rage gets a ring. The Red Lantern Corps. Most lantern rings create constructs out of light. The Red Lantern ring creates constructs out of your blood, literally. When a Red Lantern ring chooses you, it replaces your blood with red plasma energy. Your veins stop carrying oxygen and start carrying rage in liquid form. It's one of the most disturbing mechanics in the entire spectrum, and it's exactly why the Reds are impossible to forget. But here's the thing, the Red Lanterns aren't villains, they're victims. Atrocitus founded the Corps after losing everything, his family, his entire sector, all of it wiped out. His rage wasn't born from evil. It was born from grief so deep it became the only emotion left. And that's the pattern for nearly every Red Lantern. These are people who were broken first and angry second. The ring didn't corrupt them. Loss did. And then there's Dex Star. Yes, a house cat. A Red Lantern house cat. Sounds ridiculous until you hear the backstory. Dex Star was an ordinary stray taken in by a woman who loved him. She was murdered. He was thrown off a bridge by street thugs. A red ring found him mid-fall because his rage and grief were that strong. Nobody talks about this cat without getting emotional, and that's not an exaggeration. But here's where it gets worse. The ring doesn't just use your rage, it amplifies it. The angrier you get, the more powerful the ring becomes, which makes you angrier, which makes the ring stronger. It's a feedback loop with zero off switch. The Red Lantern Corps isn't just a faction, it's a machine machine designed to make broken people worse. And if you think rage is the most dangerous emotion on the spectrum, wait until you see what love does to people. The star sapphires. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The star sapphires are technically the oldest core concept on the entire emotional spectrum. They've been operating since the 1960s Silver Age, decades before anyone even thought about organizing emotions into a color-coded power system. But they weren't formalized as the violet light of love until 2009 during Blackest Night. The oldest core was literally the last one to get its official seat at the table. And the philosophy behind them is genuinely fascinating. Star Sapphire rings don't select wielders based on strength, combat skill, or willpower. They select based on emotional capacity to love. All forms of love, including self-love. The power isn't rooted in what you'd take, it's rooted in what you'd sacrifice. To wield the violet light, you have to love something so deeply that you'd fight for it, bleed for it, lose everything for it. That makes them, at least on paper, the most selfless core on the entire spectrum. But here's where it gets complicated. Carol Ferris is one of the primary leaders of the Star Sapphires. She's also Hal Jordan's on-again, off-again love interest. And that has fueled decades of debate about whether her art is a genuine expression of agency or just a narrative shortcut that permanently ties her power to a romance subplot. You've got a core built around love as a universal force, led by a character whose story is inseparable from one specific relationship. Both readings exist, and honestly, neither one is wrong. At peak strength, the Star Sapphires numbered around 1,200 members with their central power battery stationed on Zamaron, a mid-sized core with outsized narrative importance, sitting right at the emotional center of the spectrum. But love needs something to believe in, and that's exactly what the next core is built on. The Blue Lantern Corps. This is the core that sounds like a weakness until you realize it's the most brilliant piece of design in the entire spectrum. The Blue Lanterns were founded in 2008 by Ganthet and Sade, two Guardians of the Universe who were exiled from OA for the unforgivable crime of feeling emotions. Let that sink in. The most ancient beings in the DC universe kicked out two of their own for having feelings, and those two responded by building an entire core around the most defiant emotion possible: hope. But here's where it gets interesting. Blue Lantern rings have a mechanical limitation that no other core shares. They cannot fully function without a Green Lantern ring nearby. Without willpower and proximity, a Blue Lantern ring is basically a glorified nightlight. And that sounds terrible until you understand the metaphor baked into the mechanics. Hope without something to believe in is inert. It needs a foundation. It needs will before it can do anything. Once that foundation exists, Blue Lanterns become the most terrifying force multipliers in the spectrum. They supercharge Green Lantern rings, drain Sinestro core rings, and neutralize Red Lantern rage. They're not fighters. They're amplifiers. The core peaked at roughly 200 members, making them the smallest of the original 7. And that's not an oversight. Hope as a measurable, ring-worthy emotion is genuinely rare. The roster reflects the reality. St. Walker was the first and most prominent recruit, and he earned that ring by losing everything. His family, his world, all of it, gone. He found hope after total devastation, which makes him arguably the most earned ring wielder on the entire spectrum. But if hope needs willpower to function, the next core needs absolutely nothing except itself, and it will never, ever share. The Orange Lantern, every other core on the emotional spectrum, is built around a community, people united by a shared emotion, fighting together, drawing strength from each other. The Orange Lantern core is one guy, and he will never, ever share. Larfleeze is the sole wielder of the orange light of avarice, and that's not an accident or a limitation, it's the entire point. Greed cannot share. The ring itself actively prevents anyone else from wielding orange light because the emotion powering it is fundamentally incompatible with the concept of a team. Every other core proves that emotions connect people. Orange proves that one emotion destroys connection entirely. But here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. Larfleeze doesn't just fight his enemies, he collects them. When he defeats someone, the orange ring absorbs them and converts them into permanent orange energy constructs under his total control. They're not allies. They're possessions, walking trophies that fight for him, and the more he collects, the more powerful he becomes. It's an escalating monopoly with zero ceiling. He's been doing this for centuries. Larfleeze is effectively immortal, and he's held the ring so long that his identity has completely merged with the concept of wanting more. He doesn't want power specifically, he wants everything. He literally cannot tell the difference. Now, DC frequently plays Larfleeze for comedy, the galactic hoarder who throws tantrums over shiny objects, and honestly, it works on the surface. But fans have debated this for years, because underneath the jokes is something genuinely dark. This is a being who has completely erased himself in service of an emotion. There is no Larfleeze underneath the greed anymore. That's not funny, that's horrifying. But if you think a core of one is strange, wait until you meet the Indigo Tribe, because their secret makes Larfleeze look honest. The Indigo Tribe. Nobody knows what the Indigo Tribe actually is, and that's not an exaggeration or a fan complaint. It's literally the point. First appearing in Green Lantern back in 2007, the Indigo Tribe is powered by the Indigo Light of Compassion, operates from a hidden planet called Nock, and has fewer than 150 documented members. On paper, that sounds straightforward, but everything about this core is designed to raise more questions than it answers. Here's where it gets interesting. Indigo Tribe rings don't just make constructs. They operate through telepathic connection, and they can temporarily rehabilitate members of other core, including Black Lanterns. That makes them the only faction on the entire spectrum whose primary weapon isn't destruction. It's empathy-based conversion. They don't beat you. They make you feel something until you stop fighting. But the real power is even stranger than that. Members can assume the form of any being for whom they feel genuine compassion. The ring doesn't just channel emotion. It literally reshapes the wielder's identity around the act of understanding someone else. That's not a combat ability. That's a philosophical statement wearing a power ring. And this creates a fascinating tactical paradox. The Indigo Tribe is powerful enough to override other rings on the spectrum. They can neutralize threats that would destroy entire sectors, but they're philosophically resistant to direct combat. They don't want to fight, which makes them simultaneously one of the most powerful and least useful core in an actual war. Then there's the dark twist. Indigo 1, the tribe's leader, is actually a Roque, a vicious murderer who killed Abin Sur's daughter. The ring didn't reward her compassion, it forced compassion onto her as a form of punishment. The most compassionate core on the spectrum is actually a prison for the universe's worst psychopaths. That's either brilliant irony or deeply disturbing, maybe both. But compassion and secrecy are one thing. What happens when the spectrum stops representing emotions entirely and starts representing death itself? The Black Lantern Core, this is the one. This is what the entire emotional spectrum was building toward, and it's worse than you think. In 2009, Blackest Night introduced Nekron, the DC Universe's literal personification of death, and gave him an army. Black Lantern rings sought out the dead, not random corpses. Your favorite heroes, your favorite villains, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, even Hal Jordan himself. At its peak, thousands of Black Lanterns were active across the entire DC universe, and every single one of them used to be someone you cared about. But here's the thing that makes the Black Lanterns genuinely horrifying, and it's a distinction most people miss. The rings don't corrupt anyone. They don't create evil versions of beloved characters. They strip away the person entirely. Everything that made them who they were is gone. What's left is a hollow weapon wearing a familiar face. And that weapon knows exactly what to say to break you. Let me explain why that's so much worse than a simple villain resurrection. A corrupted Superman is scary, sure, but a thing that looks like Superman, sounds like Superman, remembers every private moment Clark ever shared with you, and uses all of it to exploit your grief while feeling absolutely nothing. That's not a supervillain. That's a psychological weapon designed to make you hesitate just long enough to die, and the universe had zero answer for it. No single core could stop the Black Lanterns. No amount of willpower or rage or fear made a dent. The only documented method of defeating them was combining all 7 colors of the emotional spectrum into white light, every emotion working together to create the one force that death couldn't consume. That's not just a plot resolution. That's the entire point of the spectrum finally clicking into place. Brightest Day dramatically reduced Black Lantern numbers afterward, but here's the kicker. It didn't destroy the corpse entirely. Nekron was pushed back, not erased. The door was left open, and fans have debated for over a decade whether that ending carried enough weight for a story of this scale. But if the Black Lanterns represent the ultimate darkness the spectrum was designed to fight, then there has to be an ultimate light. And there is. The White Lantern Core. Every core we've talked about so far represents one emotion, one slice of the spectrum. The White Lanterns are what happens when you combine all 7 at once. First appearing in Blackest Night number 8 in 2010, the White Lantern Corps was DC's direct answer to the Black Lanterns. Where black light represented death and the absence of emotion, white light is the opposite. Every color on the emotional spectrum fused together, powered by the entity, which is literally the life force of the entire DC universe. Not a guardian, not an ancient alien. The universe's will to exist, serving as a living power battery. And here's the thing, that sounds incredible on paper. The ultimate power source. But the cost is what makes it interesting. White Lanterns don't just channel willpower or rage or hope. They feel every emotion on the spectrum simultaneously, all the time. Willpower, fear, rage, love, hope, greed, compassion, all of it hitting you at once with zero filter. It's framed as the source of their power, but it's also a form of constant psychological overload. The most powerful ring in existence is also the one most likely to break your mind, which brings us to Kyle Rayner. Not Hal Jordan. Kyle Rayner was chosen as the primary White Lantern, and that generated serious fan debate. Hal is the more iconic Green Lantern by a mile. But the logic behind Kyle is genuinely sound. He had previously wielded every single ring color individually. He's the only Lantern in history who had already experienced every emotion on the spectrum before the white ring ever found him. He wasn't just qualified, he was the only candidate who wouldn't immediately lose his mind. Membership in the White Lantern Corps is almost non-existent. Fewer than 10 documented White Lanterns ever. The roster typically pulls one representative from each of the 7 corps to maintain balance, and DC has been notably reluctant to expand beyond that. Some fans see this as protecting the corps' narrative weight, others see it as a wasted opportunity. Either way, the result is the same. The most powerful lanterns in existence are also the rarest. But if you think the emotional spectrum stops at white light, you're wrong. Because DC eventually added something beyond the visible spectrum entirely. The Ultraviolet Lantern Corps. Every other corps on this list has a clear origin story, a major crossover event, and a well-defined place on the emotional spectrum. The Ultraviolet Lanterns have none of that, and honestly, that might be the most interesting thing about them. Introduced in 2018 during Scott Snyder and Jorge Jimenez's Justice League run, the Ultraviolet Corps didn't get a Blackest Night or a Sinestro Corps War to announce its arrival. It's powered by an emotion that sits outside the traditional spectrum entirely. On paper, it's distinct from the Red Lantern's rage, but ask 10 fans what the actual difference is, and you'll get 12 answers. But here's what makes them genuinely unlike anything else on the spectrum. The Ultraviolet Corps is connected to Umbrax, a sentient phantom galaxy that feeds on the invisible emotional spectrum, and its first mortal leader was Sinestro himself. The rings didn't scan the universe for powerful warriors, they targeted beings with deep shame and repressed emotions. No other corps in Green Lantern mythology was built around hidden feelings you don't even want to acknowledge, not one. And the rings themselves are wild. Instead of traditional hard light constructs, ultraviolet rings tap into the darkest emotions people keep hidden from the world. You're not building giant green fists. You're weaponizing the parts of yourself you never wanted anyone to see. Their status in current continuity is unclear. Their power rules shift depending on which issue you're reading. So, is this the next evolution of the emotional spectrum, or a rebirth era experiment that quietly got left behind? That's for you to decide. But a corps built around shame existing in the same mythology as Necron and the Guardians, that alone makes them worth knowing about. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.